So hello again, my name is Anna and I'm the facilitator of idtalks series. idtalks are brought forward by SALTO Inclusion and Diversity. They are independently organized events happening every second Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central European Time. And this year the motto of idtalks series is Shaping Inclusion and Diversity, a year into the new cycle of EU for Youth, EU youth programs Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps Inclusion and Diversity Strategy. We are starting a series of these webinars to support organizations in implementing youth projects that are more inclusive, more diverse, and that reflect truly the inclusion and diversity strategy of the European Union youth programs. Today, idtalks language, and we will be discovering a variety of subtopics connected to language. Language's main function is to make communication simpler, but is it really? And maybe sometimes it's increasing barriers instead of reducing them. So to discuss this very interesting topic, we have here with us not one, not two, but three speakers from Austria, and I will be very, I will briefly present our speakers today. So Petra Plicka is born in Vienna, raised in Ankara, and she studied hotel and restaurant management at Washington State University, and for over 20 years now works with different groups of people, always with the aim to facilitate understanding among them. We're also joined today by Heidi Mackowitz. She is working at Vorarlberg as a self-advocate and fighting for the rights of people with learning disabilities. And our third guest today is Barbara Eglitis. She's working at SALTO as European Solidarity Corps Resource Center with many years of experience of supporting and mentoring volunteers with and without disabilities. Without further ado, I would like to now pass the floor to our speakers today.
Sayın bayanlar ve beyler, hoş geldiniz. Mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue. Señoras et los hombres, bienvenidos. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, willkommen. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our today's talk on language. Thank you, Anna, for handing the floor over to us. Let me just quickly show you our pictures again so that you can reconnect to us. We have been featured on Instagram, so this is me. My name is Petra Plicka, Pliska, however you want to say it. Very typical Viennese name, deriving from my grandparents migrating from the former Bohemian part of the empire to Vienna. Next in line is Heidi. Heidi, möchtest du kurz deinen Namen sagen? Would you like to say your name briefly, please?
My name is Heidi Mackowitz. I work at People First Vorarlberg. This is a group with learning disabilities, and we are setting for, was heißt für die Rechte von Menschen mit Lernschwierigkeiten ein?
They're fighting for the rights of people with learning disabilities.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you very much. Now over to Barbara.
Yeah, hello, my name is Barbara Eglitis. Most of the things has been said already. What I didn't share publicly is in my student time, I worked as personal assistant, and I experienced a bit in a close contact with people with disabilities, what it means to be excluded. So from this time, also my passion and my being an ally comes from, and I'm very happy that I can be here today.
Thank you, Barbara. Now, today's program will consist of three parts. The first part, presentation, second part, interaction that you already know, and the summary at the end. How will that be done? I will give you some information on language and everything that's connected, especially to people with disabilities. And then Heidi and I recorded a video. So the interview we wanted to do live, we decided to pre-record it. And then Barbara will give us some insights on how you can use the program for your advantage and how it is supporting decreasing barriers. I will sum it up at the end, depending on how much time we have left. We don't want to go over 40 minutes with everything so that we still have enough time. And then Anna can take back over as a facilitator and bring you all into breakout sessions, and maybe we can answer some questions. And at the end, I'm very excited to see Olaja's summary that you all are familiar with. Let's see, I'm very, very curious on that. Okay, now, some of you might have been here a month ago on the talk on the ID talk on strategy with Susie and Tony. They presented the ID roadmap, an interactive PDF, very exciting thing. And I was like, hey, that's exactly what we're talking about today. And it's a little bit blurry, but it says reducing barriers. One of the parts of the strategy is to reduce barriers. And this is what we will look at today. In our preparation talk, Anna and Maria asked me to say a little bit more about myself. So let me tell you what I actually also do. This is a screenshot from a video that was recorded this February at the Zero Project Conference. And yeah, how did I get there? From a very early age, when I was a child, foreign languages were always very interesting for me. Turkish, of course, even though I'm not fluent anymore, but I love Turkish as a language, but I also always loved to speak English. Maybe that's because my grandmother used to work in London before she came back to Vienna in 1935, something like that. I don't know. I love English. That's a fact. And I studied tourism and hotel management, and I was like, I'll be a tourism chef. I will be maybe a manager of a big hotel in Hawaii one day because I speak English and blah. But you know, now I'm here in Vienna, kind of stuck in Vienna, but I'm not, I'm very grateful about that. I'm not sad about this. I love Vienna, I love being here, and I love the job I've been doing for the last 20 years. I have supported various types of people with language problems, be it that it's not their native language, or be it that they have a learning difficulty. And so by accident, because I like drawing and standing on a flip chart and writing things and drawing things, I became a facilitator on easy language. And yes, sometimes this is called graphic facilitation, but this wouldn't do justice to the people who are graphic facilitators like Olaja, because they're pros in what they're doing. I'm not at all an artist. I just try to summarize things with drawings and transfer it to easy language. If you want to see how that looks like, I'm leaving you this link in the slides. If you're interested, skip to if you want to see this talk to 1 hour and 46 minutes, and you can watch this. But I'm not going to share this with you today. That's not why we are here for. If we are speaking about shaping inclusion and diversity, we're doing this because we don't want to leave anybody behind. We want to make sure that we take the people along with us on the ride. And we do that also by language. And Anna said that in the beginning, the function of language actually is to make communication simpler. And I'm adding, or even possible, right? I mean, how do we otherwise know what the other person wants from us? And language can be a barrier too. It's on the one side, it should facilitate our understanding, but it could also be a barrier. The question is it reducing or increasing barriers for participation? Is it inviting or discouraging? How do we communicate about work on local and international level to appeal and attract diverse groups of young people? And this is the key part. That's why I highlighted it. Yeah? We want diverse groups of people. Now, I will stop my presentation for a second so that we can all see each other better by show of hand. How many here are actually English native speakers? Let's see. And you can either raise your hand in front of the camera, or you can put the hands up button on Zoom. Anybody here who is English native speaker? Doesn't look like it, right? I don't, also with the non-videos, I don't see any hands up. Same here. We are not native speakers, right? English is our second, sometimes third language. So let's get back to some statistics, because we're not the only ones. Yeah, we're not alone with this. Let me show you some statistics. I picked some German ones. Let me just give you an idea. These are students in common schools who have English as their first language topic. This was in the year 2007 and 2012. And let's pick, one thing I find very interesting is Malta. Malta had 36% of students learning English in their basic school in the year 2007. And apparently they saw that there is a problem, and now it's 100%. Or they decided English is going to be more important, who knows? So that's one statistic, how many pupils actually learn English in school in European countries. And then I found another one on how well do people speak English. And here you can see the first one is excellent, the second one would be good, and the other ones are like medium range capacity of speaking English. We find a lot of European countries on the list: Netherlands, Austria. I was very surprised about that. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Portugal, Sweden, Finland, and so on. And now you're going to say probably, oh my God, too much information. Don't you also sometimes think that people giving us statistics and they're like, oh, this is too much? And now imagine you have a learning disability. This is too much information. So let me try to give you a drawn summary of what I found out. We have two aspects: how many pupils in school take English as a class, and how well do people speak English in Europe. And here you can see excellent. We have some dots here. These are the excellent English capacities, and then some good English capacity. So we have a lot of European countries with quite good English skills, but not all of them. And you see we have some white dots. And I mean, Great Britain, of course, is not on there. First of all, it's not a European Union country anymore, and it's their native language, so they don't count. But as a summary of the statistics, in 2012, in 22 out of that time 28 European Union countries, about 90% of the pupils learn English in school. So we have a very high number of children who learn English in school. But looking then into the speaking any kind of foreign language, only within 8 out of the 28 countries, people really speak a second language. So this should only show you that we are not alone with the fact that English is not our first language, and learning a second language is something that not everybody can do, right? So we don't want to leave anyone behind. And before I now jump into the topic of disability, one more activity I would ask you to do. Please open the chat window, and maybe Anna, you can help me a little bit with looking at the chat. I will ask you a question now, and I'm asking you to type into the chat whatever comes to your mind first. So open the chat, and then I will now say something, and you will either have a picture in your head or a word that pops up. Whatever it is, describe it or type it down into the chat. Okay, let's see what happens. What's the first thing that comes to your mind if I say disability?
Petra, would you like me to read it immediately as it comes?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I mean, I opened the chat myself. Let's see if anything is there. Less opportunity, power.
Where?
Anna, can you read it? Because it's a lot now.
Lack of socialization, restriction, barriers, wheelchair, barriers many times, fewer opportunities, discrimination, migration background, barriers again. Yeah, many times, I think very often barriers, lack of infrastructure, somebody wrote now.
Yeah. So we heard barriers a lot. We heard migration background. That's interesting because that's a big topic. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Yeah? Lack of infrastructure, accessibility or missing accessibility. So
discrimination.
A lot on discrimination, exactly. So we have a high awareness on disability in this group. And so I think I will just, let me just close the chat so I'm not so distracted. Let's look at disability and how many people are actually affected, and especially how many children are affected. One person put in the chat wheelchair. When I do my drawing courses, I always ask the people, draw disability. And most of the people draw a wheelchair as a first thing. And that's as a picture, that's mostly what comes to our mind first. But when we talk about disability, we also mean blind people. We mean people who have a lack of language and other things. So it's a very diverse group we are talking about. And some tip, if you want to use supportive communication and you're not an artist yourself, you can always put a word into the internet and see what happens. Yeah, put in the word and then icon. And I did this kind of search as a preparation for today. And I entered disability icon. And this was one of the results. And what can we see here? We can see obviously some problem with eyesight, some problem with hearing, some problem with speech or language, wheelchair twice, I don't know why, but we have a wheelchair user and a wheelchair without a person. I looked up the word for prosthesis. I think that's how you correctly pronounce it, prosthesis. Yeah, so if you have some part of your body replaced, like a leg or an arm. Again, glasses. This other icon here is typical for sign language, but also crutches, using a hearing aid or a cane. What we don't see here on this collection of icons is a learning disability. So I entered learning disability, and this is what the internet popped up with. Yeah? So learning difficulty is very hard to draw, of course, but what do we mean? We will get to that in a second. I researched I tried to find some data also on children with disabilities, and UNICEF has publicized some interesting facts. First of all, children and young people with disabilities are a highly diverse population group. That's clear. They include children who were born with a genetic condition that affects their physical, mental, or social development. Those who sustained a serious injury, nutritional deficiency, or infection that resulted in long-term functional consequences. Or those exposed to environmental toxins that resulted in developmental delays and learning disabilities. Children with disabilities also include those who developed anxiety or depression as a result of stressful life events. And this is actually a very large group of young people and furthermore adults. The total invisibility of the disability makes it very hard for this group to fight for their rights. And many people I know who now live in sheltered houses, that's how you call it in English, I guess, don't have a visible disability, but they had some tragic and trauma in their childhood, and that prevented them from further developing their skills. So one more statistic. How many people are we talking about? According to statistics that derive from substantial scientific research and estimates, in Europe, 15% of the population is dealing with dyslexia or some type of learning disability. Those are not included in the numbers of people with disability, because disability is everything else but dyslexia and learning disability. Yeah? So it's a large group if we add the following. Over 1 billion people, actually 1.2 billion people, are estimated to live with some form of disability. This corresponds to about 15% of the world population. And this is why this project presented themselves at Xerocon. We the 15 is an initiative of athletes with any kind of disability who say we want to be respected and we are abled sports people. And they call themselves We the 15 due to that fact that 15% of the population actually are part of this community. One last figure. If we look at the European Union, the Eurostat data, the population reporting long-standing disabilities in the year 2017 was actually 25%. So a quarter of the European population in average. And here, of course, we have to differentiate between young people and the adult population, because within the adult population, we of course also include people who receive a disability, that's I think how you can say it, due to long age and some illnesses and breakdowns they have because they get older. So 25% including also older people with disabilities. One more fact, what we see right now in sheltered houses and sheltered working conditions is that we see more and more, thank God, more and more people with disabilities getting older. And I'm saying thank God because some 70 years ago, they didn't have a chance to live. Yeah? So fortunately, we see a lot of people with disabilities getting older, and then they have even extra topics that must be considered. But we are now talking about the youth, so let's get back to our topic. And you might say like, okay, Petra, can you please go and get to the point? And I will do that now. We want to live in a world without barriers, and we want to create a world without barriers, also in youth work. And in order to know what's best, we should ask the experts. One of the mottos, actually the biggest motto of people with learning disabilities is nothing about us without us. And this is why we recorded the video. And I will now give you like a few seconds to, I don't know, grab a drink or something, because I will switch to the video, and please give me like 1 minute to technically solve that.
And in the meantime, if you have questions, comments, or useful resources and links, feel free to actively use the chat here.
Okay, I just, yeah. Okay, now let's get to the video. We tested it before and it worked quite well. Let's give it a try.
Hello, I am Heidi. I am 42 years old, and I am worked for 14 years by Mensch zuerst.
And how did you get to the project?
I got an email from Barbara from Grenzenlos Without Borders for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
She told me she has a project, Ready, Steady, Go, and the theater camp for 3 weeks was in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
The theater camp by Grenzenlos was an exciting and adventure tours event.
Mm-hmm.
there was 30 people from different countries participating. They came from Spain, Serbia, Italy, Germany, Austria, etc.
Mhm.
People with disabilities were also invited. We learn about different ways to express yourself, like through theater, clowning, dancing, as well as juggling balls, chair games, and using various and other projects.
Very good. Various other. Very good.
Thank you. We
Mhm.
also practice different faces, expressions, mimicking,
Mhm.
and body movement.
Very interesting. Okay.
All these exercises prepared us for a very creative and funny final performance. The program was great.
Mhm.
And on the other hand,
Mhm.
since I am not fluent in English, I often had trouble understanding what I was supposed to during the exercises.
Mhm.
It would
Difficult.
have been very helpful to have a translator.
Mhm.
To get some sleep without the other people in the same room in sleeping bags on the floor was a major challenge for me. Shopping for and preparing food was also difficult and rather unorganized.
Organized. Mhm.
Unorganized.
Yeah, it's a difficult word. Okay.
Very
Uh-huh.
Also, the showers and 2 toilets for 30 people were not enough.
Not good. Mhm.
It's not good, no.
No.
I made for very, I meet for very long waiting times. I am not sure I can recommend,
Mhm.
aber ich glaube, jetzt kommt eigentlich die Frage noch, gell?
Ja, ich kann dich das jetzt fragen. I will ask you now the question. Would you recommend the program to other people with learning disabilities?
I'm not sure I can recommend this for people with learning disabilities.
Mhm.
Most can not speak English and they need help with transportation
Mhm.
to and from the venue.
Mhm.
It would definitely help to get at a slower pace and have better explanations.
Yes, best explanations. Mhm. Okay. Do you have tips for organizations who
Yes.
support the project?
Yes,
Okay.
I would recommend the work in long groups with assistance.
Mhm. So in large groups with assistants. Yes.
You need a lot of time and you need some summaries or
Summaries, the thing that I will do.
summary
Zusammenfassung, summary. Yes.
in easy languages.
Mhm.
And you should also work in a small groups.
Mhm.
And small groups can work peer-to-peer.
Mhm.
Good assistants are important.
Yes.
A good assistant has to be there and
Repeat. Repeat.
genau,
Yeah.
repeat what people said.
Okay.
A good assistant asks questions
Yes.
answers questions.
Yes,
Thank you.
very good.
Thanks. A good assistant help me if I ask for it.
Aha, so this is what you need from a good assistant.
Yeah.
And so these were some tips for organizations. Do you also have tips for future participants?
Yes, I have.
Okay, please. Yes.
Be prepared to support people with disabilities. You can enjoy the program, but you can also learn how to work with people with disabilities.
Mhm.
This would be a big help for you and for us.
Ah, okay. So that's a very good tip at the end. Thank you very much. I will now stop the recording for 1 second and I will make a summary of your interview. We will now hear a short summary of the interview with Heidi. This is the overview. Let's go into detail. Heidi told us that she worked for Mensch zuerst, People First, for Radlberg for 14 years. She received an email about 4 years ago from Barbara. This is how she learned about the project. She told us that there were 2 projects she was part of, but we talked about the second one more. The second one was Grenzenlos, Without Borders. This was a 3-week theater course or theater camp in Vienna. There were 30 people in the camp. They were from different countries like Spain, Italy, Serbia, Germany, Austria, and other countries, and people with disabilities were also invited. They learned all kinds of theater work, like clowning, juggling, or also how to use your mimic and your body language on the stage. Heidi told us that they had 3 weeks to prepare for a final great show, and the whole program was really great. On the other hand, she said it was very difficult to understand what she was supposed to do. So she was like, you speak English and I don't speak English so well. Can you please translate? So it wasn't always easy to understand. Also, it was difficult to have 30 people in one room to sleep and to organize all the food together, and also to have only 2 showers and 2 toilets for so many people. So she said it was maybe difficult to be part of this surrounding program. So the summary would be the surrounding support was not so good. It could have been better. Then we asked Heidi if she would recommend it to other people with disabilities. Heidi said, I'm not sure if I would recommend it to other people with learning difficulties, because people with learning difficulties face a lot of barriers, like language or also mobility. How do they get to the venue? How do they get there? But also that it is always very fast, and people with learning disabilities need a slower speed and maybe some more breaks. And also, if there are too many people, it is important to have support around the person. So person-centered support. That's what we were talking about in the preparation. Then we also asked Heidi if she has some tips for the organizations. And she said yes. For organizations, it is important that you work in large groups, and I try to draw it for you. So you have large groups and you make sure you have a good assistant there. And also, if you work in large groups, make sure to add a summary in easy language. But don't only work in large groups, also work in smaller groups where people can be peer-to-peer And also in peer-to-peer groups, there should be assistance. Some tips for good assistance. Assistants should be there. They should repeat what has been said. They should ask questions or answer questions. And they should provide help if a person asks for it, and only then. And then Heidi told us about a tip for future participants. Heidi said, future participants, be prepared to support people with disabilities, because this will be something that is good for you and for us. I hope I summarized it correctly. Okay, so we stop the recording here, and now back to the live session. Goodbye. See you live. So we're back in the live session. Everybody still here? Good. Well, thank you, Heidi. Danke, liebe Heidi. Thank you very much for this very good interview. It took us some time, but I think we got there. Excuse also some little technical problems. Heidi, in the chat, they are all saying thanks, great, thumbs up, also Gratulation. Before we go to some discussion, let me hand over to Barbara. I will share my presentation again because I integrated all our slides. By the way, the summary of the talk of the interview with Heidi is also included in today's slides. And if you have questions later on, we can go back to those. Okay. But I will now hand over to Barbara, and she will tell us about. Wait. Now over to Barbara. And I'm closing my microphone. It's your turn.
And you can already go to the next slide. As many of you know, the youth programs, Erasmus Plus Youth and the European Solidarity Corps, have an inclusion as a program priority. And it's not just to have a nice word, but it's really meant like that. And I would like just to highlight a few, because the program have many possibilities, but a few things, and to bridge to what Heidi said, so that you really use the full potential of the programs if you plan to do so. And I think we can go on the next slide. I think that the first thing is, of course, you need to see what you want to do and what you want to reach. That's really up to you. But I would really recommend to look at the length and the design of the activity. Sometimes it's really beneficial. Heidi shared she was part of a team volunteering, and it was only 3 weeks long. So it was a shorter activity. So really think about the length of the activity so that it supports your participants. Also think about the team possibilities. For instance, youth exchanges, volunteering teams are sometimes an easy step in for people with learning difficulties, because if you're not alone in a project activity, you might dare to start, entering in the international field. And then, of course, there's also the financial support. You can apply for exceptional costs, and this can be used for personal assistance, for translations, also in easy language. So really use this possibility. You have also the possibility to apply for inclusion support, which is a lump sum. And in the European Solidarity Corps, in volunteering activities, when Heidi did the activity, that was not possible. So I'm very happy that the programs are developing. You can even request the exceptional costs after you applied for the grant. So you don't need to know it half year in advance, but when you see you involve a volunteer, you can even contact your national agency afterwards and say, look, now we need it. We need someone to assist. We need translation into easy language, and you can get the financial support for it. So that's really a very good development. And what I always would do is to consult your national agency to ask. Another tip is, and that goes also because I see there are some national agency and SALTO colleagues among us, check your project activity life cycle. For instance, that's how I got to know to Petra. We had a training course for municipalities, and we decided that, yeah, we speak a complicated program language, and it's really good to have someone to translate it in an easier language so that it's understandable for everyone. So really identify the barriers. Where are the barriers? With whom do you prepare the project? Do you involve someone with a learning difficulty before? Do you plan it before? These are all things which help. Yeah, there are many organizations and people who can be involved even before the activity. And on the last slide, I picked some random tips. The power of an honest feedback, like what Heidi did. I was the Barbara back then. Yeah, it is also an invitation to make mistakes and to learn. Heidi is still with us. She didn't die, right, Heidi? And is still supporting us. So it is also okay to not make it perfect, but to learn from that and to bring your projects forward. The learning pace, Heidi, you mentioned it, really to slow down sometimes and not to rush, to balance, especially in team projects, the support of the whole group and the individuals, to have a really good balance in having both. And something which I think is very common in our youth field is don't worry about repetition. Summarizing things, repeating things are part of learning, and all the youth activities support learning. So don't worry to repeat things. We do not always need to entertain. Repetition is also a methodology how you can learn things. So this was in a nutshell what I wanted to share with you from my experience. Thank you. And I hand over back to Petra.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, in a nutshell, that's something I love to draw because it's easy to draw. Actually, you can see it on this picture right there. Here, this is a nutshell. Let me summarize. Providing accessible language. I'm showing you this picture once again. If you want to support people with any kind of communication difficulty, you could have a sign language interpreter. You could have automated subtitles, which is easy if you use YouTube. But there are other programs as well that can provide that automatically. If you don't have that, what we always do is we have a person who can type very fast, and she's doing the automated subtitles by doing it live. Make sure people speak in easy language, and afterwards summarize it if possible with some visuals. Visuals are very useful for all the people who cannot read very well, who are not fluent in a language. So that is on the Zero Project conference, there are not many people with learning disabilities, but there are many non-native English speakers, and they're almost always very thankful and come up and say, hey, thank you for the summary because I didn't get the message quite then. Not because the speaker was making a mistake, but because it was just too much information on one slide or on one speech. Keep it simple. So don't make a mocha, a perfectly pulled shot out of our signature espresso blend, but hot milk and espresso mixed with chocolate. If you want to go into detail, I just found this today, to be honest, but I watched it parts through. It's a whole hour on a YouTube video on plain language and easy language, if you're interested. And use icons or self-drawn images. So icons, this is a screenshot from my PowerPoint in German, but I'm sure it's the same in English. If you go on enter, you find clip arts, and then you can enter very simple icons. So these would be simple icons, or use some self-drawn images, and they don't have to be perfect. We're not aiming for perfect. We're aiming for supportive communication. I do hold some seminars on this type of work I'm doing, and the main message is you need a pen and a piece of paper or some digital surface, and just draw something. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I will end with some fun fact from Austria. It's a little present from Austria. I would like to introduce you to one of my role models. Can you tell what this graph might mean? Anybody? We're seeing a hand and a bulb, a light bulb. So just guess, you don't have to answer it. Yeah. But what we see here is a drawing from the 1920s. It's a graph from the 1920s. And it was one of the great inventions of Otto Neurath. He lived from 1882 to 1945. He was an Austrian-born philosopher of science, a sociologist, and political economist, and he invented isotope method. Before he fled from Austria in 1934, he was one of the leading figures in the Vienna Circle. And that's how they summarize it in the book about him, in his biography, from hieroglyphs to isotype, a visual autobiography. And I'm leaving you this graph, and it's all in German, but I'm quite sure you can figure out what it means. Let's see. What do you think? We are seeing some babies up here and some coffins on the bottom. And to solve the riddle, it is births in a certain year and deaths in a certain year. And here you can see in 1918 in Vienna, we had very little births and a lot of deaths. And unfortunately, we know why this was the case, right? Okay, so it's a fun fact and a funny story with some tragic graphs, but let me end with some Swedish continuing of this. You might know that one. Simple language in Swedish. I guess you have probably, if you have ever shopped in this Swedish furniture shop, you may be familiar with this. And I'm now handing over to our facilitator. And I'm stopping the presentation. Back to Anna.
Thank you very much. And also, you filled in so many of the gaps that I had in my opening speech, like a very visual presentation of what is going to happen today. And this is really, I think, walking the talk. We're not only talking about easy language today, but using the easy language today. And a special thanks for you for that. I have been following the chat, and Maria, my colleague from SALTO Inclusion and Diversity as well. Maria, do we have any questions, burning questions, immediate comments in our chat that we need to address now?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Barbara, Petra, and Heidi. I just discovered that youth work has something to learn from IKEA. It's great, and I think what I find really important is that everything you were talking about today can and should be actually applied to any project we organize, because Petra, as you said, not just if project is involving young people with learning disabilities, because as you said, most of our projects are actually involving not native English speakers. So yeah, thank you for sharing your tips. There were just few compliments, especially on the video that you did. So Heidi, really thank you for sharing your experience. I think La Carmela and Fernando commented on great video. And there was one comment also on why we are taking an image of wheelchair as an image of disability that you already got back to Petra in the chat. So that was all. I don't know if anyone has a question right now to ask.
If not, I think there is more opportunity to ask the questions and bring back comments. So how the ID talks continue is that now we will be inviting you to breakout rooms to talk to each other about your impressions of the presentation that was made by Heidi, Barbara, and Petra together. And when you come back after 10 minutes discussion in your small groups, we would like to ask you to bring back to our guests today a question or a comment or something maybe that you'd like to add from your side as a group. So Maria, once we are ready for the breakout rooms, please send us to breakout rooms. And at this point, we are also going to stop the streaming of the video on Facebook. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's so nice to see you back again. Hopefully you brought for us some questions and comments after your group discussions, because our speakers are very much looking forward to getting those. So how we will do it, first, let's take the question or comment per group. And then if we have more time, then we can also address some individual requests and questions, if you have any. We also have received one more question in the chat, and I would also ask our speakers to address that as well after answering the question from the groups. So let's say room number 1 as group number 1. Who would be your spokesperson, and what is that one question or comment you are bringing to the attention of our speakers? Just feel free to unmute yourselves and speak up.
The time was quite short. We talked a lot of things, but we didn't end up with a specific question. I don't know if anyone of the group wants to say something else, but we were talking about being prepared for having disability people in the projects, and I was sharing that we have to apply for that preparation before, and sometimes our partners ask us to receive people with disabilities, and after that I think it's not possible to ask that preparation. So all the projects should have something like a percentage of preparation budget, that in the end, if you didn't receive anyone with that with those disabilities, we could give the money back. It's not really a question, sorry.
No, but I think it's maybe a call again to Barbara to maybe one more time clarify what are some of the exceptional costs that you could ask for when you have a person with disability coming to the project, especially people with learning disabilities, and what is the procedure like. So thank you very much for sharing your discussion, and somehow it turned into a question by itself.
I still have one. I'm from room 1, and I had a question to Petra, because well, I wrote about the migration background, and you said in the beginning it was a big issue. Well, how do we tackle this issue of migration background as a disability? Is it a disability? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you could clarify on this as well, Petra. And let's also take the questions/comments from room 2 and then pass the floor to our speakers. Anybody from room 2 would like to speak up on behalf of the group?
I will take the floor. We also don't have any question. We just discussed about this really interesting presentation, and we say that we really like it, and we've learned like many different things and very interesting things, and also that the presentation, it was indeed has a lot of details that help us also to improve our presentations when we have people with any kind of disability and learning disability. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for your questions, comments. Now, Barbara and Petra, you have the floor. And of course, Heidi, if you have something to add from your experience as a participant, please feel free to take the floor as well.
Petra, do you want to go first with the connection on disability and migration?
Yes, I'll probably go first on that one. Thank you. So Benamar, you said you entered this comment, migration background as being an issue. Not that I have the right answer for that, but I from working in the field for so long, first of all, I have experienced that a lot of people with disabilities plus migration background really suffer from a double discrimination fact. So if we tackle one of the issues, we can make a big difference already. And again, I think language is one of the keys in that point. And I'm not only saying that because I'm today speaking about language, but what's the main problem? Migration often comes with not speaking the language of the country, of the receiving country. So, and even if you're born in a like second generation migration background, sometimes you grow up in a family that doesn't speak the local language. So most of the times language barriers are the big point. So tackling this by just accepting and not always forcing language people, like forcing the language onto the people, is probably one of the first things we can do. And let me use the example of deaf and hard of hearing people. I do have friends who are deaf due to my job. Otherwise, we would not have met, but we have become friends. And when I go out with them to a restaurant, the people there see that we are speaking sign language, or they are speaking sign language and helping me understand. And then the waiter comes up and says, this is the price. And my friend says, he speaks a little bit, he says, cannot hear. And he shouts at the person, but he has this piece of paper here where you can see the price. Yeah. So it's like, just switch your mindset. So you cannot force speaking onto a deaf person. There's no way you can do that. And just keep that in mind. You cannot force a language onto a person. I told you I grew up in Turkey. I'm not Turkish. My father is not Turkish. He still lives there. He's now 80 years old and he's lived there for 40 years. You cannot force Turkish into my father. I mean, he tries and he's not so bad, but you cannot force it into the person. He tries really hard. But with his migration background and language, just be kind and say that some people cannot learn a language, and then use other methods. This is my plaidoyer on language and migration and learning disability.
Thank you.
And it refers a bit also to what Heidi said on the, because Heidi, you were part of a team volunteering using theater methodology. So really to use, I mean, we have a full potential of other ways how to communicate and really be creative. I think it sounds a bit simple, but I think it really helps in communicating, especially in the youth work field.
Heidi, you want to add something? Heidi?
Can you speak a little bit slowly and not understand your question, or is it not a question?
It was not a question, and I'm very sorry. I speed down.
Just to summarize it in easy words again, Heidi, Barbara just said that not only language, not only speaking is important, but maybe mimicking and gesturing, and you learn juggling. So we have all kinds of ways to communicate, and this is what Barbara was saying. Ja, das hat die Barbara gesagt. Okay.
Barbara, if you could also take the question and one more time clarify about exceptional costs and how we can support organizations in making international projects involving participants with different kinds of disabilities.
Yeah, and I will combine it with the question which is in the chat on what to do if afterwards you discover that you want to change your project even, or you want to involve in a different target group, which you were not planned to do at the beginning, which happens really very often. I think that's how youth work is, it's changing. I cannot give you a standard answer because there are two programs, each strand, each activity functions a bit different. So I will try to be general, but still give you some answers. And I would really recommend you always talk with your national agency, because they are the ones who fund your project, and they can also give you advice. And so that's advice number one. On the change of target groups, I think I can just underline aiming for diversity is always a good thing, and to find a way to do so is always a good thing. And it depends, of course, what kind of activity you want to do. I mentioned in the beginning, in the European Solidarity Corps, if you do or if you plan to do a volunteering activity, you can even change the costs afterwards. In Erasmus Plus, that's not possible if you have already a project granted. But still, there are possibilities where you can be a bit more flexible. In overall, there is the possibility to apply for exceptional costs in case you need financial support. Being inclusive does not always mean that you need more money. Sometimes it's just, as Petra said, changing a mindset or being creative. I mean, this cannot be funded by money. But for instance, exceptional costs can be assistance, various assistance, if that exists in your country or in the country you plan to do the activity. It can be translating things if you see that that's needed to enable a certain person or a certain group of young people to take part. If you justify that, you can apply for these costs. Yeah. What else can it be? Yeah, little things to adjust your environment, or borrowing things. Sometimes, you know, you need I don't know, a screen reader if it's not available, or you need any other material. And for instance, you could also apply for costs having someone like Petra to do the translation for you. Yeah, these are all things which are possible. And again, always talk to your national agency. Some agencies have coaches, so really coaches to whom you can go, and you get the advices how you design the project best. Not all have that, but support is provided. And a third thing is, when we work with EU funding programs, sometimes we forget that this is not the only thing in the world. Yeah, sometimes there are other pots. Sometimes there are national possibilities where you can also get grant. Like sometimes municipalities provide a pot of money, and when you say, okay, I have a EU funded project, but we lack the costs for an assistance, is there any national possibility? Sometimes you are lucky and you find also alternative ways to get grants funded. So really think a bit broader, look what is around, who else can support your activity. I don't know if that helped. If not, then you would need to give me more details of your activity so that I can answer it really very precisely.
And to do so, you can always check out the resource center. SALTO Inclusion and Diversity Resource Center has a lot of resources on this, as well as the other resource centers like the Solidarity Corps Resource Center as well. Petra, would you like to add something to that last question, or?
I would like to come to a question that was asked on when inviting applicants. Yeah, Barbara has already answered that, where the money can come from and the change of mindset. But the question in the chat was, is it okay when inviting participants to join to specify which group of disability they can apply, and which group? Here I would like to say that it is always okay, before you do any kind of event, to ask a person if they have any specific need for assistance. So you don't ask if you are deaf or if you have a learning disability, but you make, either you make a checkbox or you just ask the question, do you have any need of assistance? And that could be, yes, I need a sign language interpreter, or yes, I need accessible doors and an elevator. It could also mean I need somebody to assist me to pick me up from the bus stop. I do have a participant who is blind in one of my groups, and we always pick him up from the underground station. He finds his way perfectly, but we pick him up from there. So you, before you invite people, and actually on the invitation form or in the invitation itself, you can ask, if you have any assistance needs, please just let us know. So you already show that you're open to a diverse group of people. That's what I would like to add.
Thank you very much. And we have one more question there, like rather a request about how or where can we find resources to create these simple but understandable graphics for our presentations or posters that could maybe be helpful in visualizing what we are going to say. And if you could give a hint or maybe add a link, a useful link to this resource in the article that you're going to produce after the talk today.
I will be more than happy to enter some or to give you some more links. For now, some of the tips I already gave you in the presentation. It's really not difficult to draw something. And again, don't aim for perfect. And I looked at the chat, it's like, I have no talents at all, but besides using it for youth work, I needed to explain something to my kids. And I don't know, if you sit down with your kid and ask them, how would you draw it? They will do it for you. And that's the same thing I do with my clients. I'm calling clients, with people I support. I'm like, okay, how would you draw it? And then try. My favorite story I always tell in my seminars that I hold on. Actually, I did a seminar on how to draw simple pictures for youth workers in Vienna. And one story I keep telling is I was very exciting in front of the University of Salzburg on Austrian law. So absolutely not my topic. And the professor said something like, the law is like the lion. And I was like, lion, that's good. I can draw a lion. And I don't know, I should show you, I don't have it here. This was everything but a lion. It was just some animal with some, I don't know. But the whole class or the audience was laughing their heads off when I showed them my picture. And I'm like, okay, this is a lion. And everybody was laughing and they remembered the lion. And I remembered the lion myself. It is okay to laugh because laughter will bring us joy. And if it brings us joy, we can learn better. So yes, we do have a very talented artist here, but not all of us are talented artists, and we don't have to be. That's my tip. And again, the word you want to draw, put it into some search engine and then add clip art or icon, and it will give you some inspiration. Be careful with copyright violations, but as an inspiration, that's always fine. And you can use it and you can try to draw it. That's it, really. Just go for it. It's fun, believe me.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we could go on for long hours to discuss this topic, because unfortunately, it is also one of those topics that is not very often brought to the attention. And this is kind of staying on out of the margins of our discussions, but I'm very happy that today we had the chance to uncover it a bit. And also for our audience to remember, there will be an article to follow today's ID talk by our speakers. And we will share this article together with the recording of this video to you. But before we all depart, and Petra has made multiple references to a very talented artist person from our team, Olaja, who has been tirelessly working in the background to create a graphic recording of today's ID talk. So I'll be very, very interested to see what you have today for us, Olaja. And now I am passing you the floor.
Thank you so much. As usual, I hope you can hear me, and I hope that very soon you're able to see my screen.
We do.
And I must admit that I was absolutely carried away. Thank you so much, Petra, Barbara, and Heidi, because it was so interesting. And especially with Petra's input, it is very close to my heart because, I also work with visuals and I don't consider myself one of the very talented. It's just just about doing it and about making sure that we pass messages from one side to the other in whatever way we find. And yeah, so I really enjoyed. I will, of course, fill up the visual. Now you can see in full screen, I think. And yeah, basically to recap, we were reminded that yeah, even though language is supposed to be something to connect us with other people, sometimes it's a bit of an obstacle. And the thing is that we are not alone. Most of us can experience different ways of obstacles connected with language. And if we look at the disabilities around us, many of them are not visible. This reference of leaving no one behind, because you never know what is behind the people that you have around. And that is why we need to always be aware of this and always make sure that whether we know for sure if someone has a specific type of disability or not, we should aim for our projects to be the most inclusive that we can do. And yeah, here specifically about people with learning disabilities, we were hearing Heidi's story of this experience in different international events and how sometimes it's not super easy. And this made me actually go back to other ID talks we had, talking about not only inclusion, but talking about outreach and why are not so many certain type of people involved in international youth work. So I must admit that, there is not so many drawings because I was really thinking about everything that we have done in ID talks and how everything is interconnected at the end. And for me, the main message that I take from here, it's this message of change of mindset, openness and creativity. And if we want to make things accessible, there is always a way to do it. So it's more an aspect of will, let's say. So I'm sure that we will get there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Olaja. To our participants here, please don't forget to leave your comments about today's ID talk before you leave. But now I would like to, before we adjourn, I would like to ask our speakers today if there is a final message or something they would like to say before we call it off.
Heidi, möchtest du dein Mikrofon aufdrehen einmal?
Ja.
Möchtest du noch was auf Englisch sagen oder auf Deutsch und wir übersetzen das für dich, so als Abschluss von heute?
Ja. Was wir auch gelernt haben bei Mensch zuerst, weil wir auch immer ziemlich Herausforderungen haben, mit Menschen mit Lernschwierigkeiten in Kontakt zu gehen. Vieles ist es so, dass wir persönlich in Kontakt gehen. Also wir gehen in Werkstätte, gehen in Angebote, wo Menschen mit Lernschwierigkeiten dabei sind, gehen dann in Kontakt mit ihnen und erzählen von unserem Projekt. Und oft ist es so, dass es sehr viel Zeit und Geduld braucht.
Ich werde es mal kurz übersetzen, Heidi, ja?
Gern.
Okay. So one of the things Heidi has learned with her colleagues in working the project People First in Vorarlberg was that it is really important to get personal contact to people with learning disabilities. So what they do is they go and visit people who are in sheltered houses and sheltered workspaces and tell them what their work is and what they are doing, because it's about this personal contact. Ja, Heidi, ich habe versucht, das einigermaßen zu übersetzen.
Und was wir auch machen, wir haben viele Adressen von Menschen mit Lernschwierigkeiten und dann schreiben wir eine Frage, was möchtet ihr für ein Angebot haben?
Okay.
Zum Beispiel Liebe oder Sexualität oder Feste machen oder was auch sehr gut ankommt, ist Männer- und Frauengruppen, sind wir drauf gekommen. Okay. Was wir jetzt auch dran sind, ist, dass wir einen ehrenamtlichen Stammtisch machen, wo Menschen mit Lernschwierigkeiten mitarbeiten können, und das ist sehr gefragt.
Gut, Heidi, ich werde das jetzt noch kurz zusammenfassen. Wir müssen nur schauen, dass wir mit der Zeit durchkommen. Ich probiere es mal. Barbara, falls ich was vergessen habe, bitte spring ein. So what Heidi now said was that they have very good experience in having addresses of people with learning disabilities, and they actually send them letters and ask them questions. They ask them, what are you interested in? What are some topics that would be fascinating for you? And two of them are love and sexuality. It's a very big topic, and I guess you as youth workers can connect probably very much to that topic. And what was also very successful is having women and men groups, so separated from each other so they can talk amongst each other. And the last thing she told us about was that they have a, what's Stammtisch in English?
Regular meeting.
Regular meeting, like when you always go to the same restaurant and everybody sits at the same table, Stammtisch, the main table where everybody meets and chit chat. So they made one of those regular meetings for people with learning disabilities, so they can talk in a peer-to-peer setting. I think that's one last message from Heidi to us. And I think I will just connect to this. Peers are the most important source of information for young people, for people of any age, but especially in youth work. I guess you have this experience, you've had these experiences. Peers are important, and peers of peers with disability are even more important. Role models, people that go the way and I can follow. So that's one last thing I would like to encourage you to bring a lot more people with disabilities into the program.
Yeah, I can maybe just underline that and sharing that I'm super happy that so many of you joined, because it's really a sign and great that so many organizations and people are ready to work on their communication. And I think together we can really change this and have a more diverse program and everyone involved in the youth programs.
Yeah, thank you very much on behalf of our whole team, Maria, Olaja, myself, and our colleagues that are working in the background to make the ID Talks possible. And we really hope to see you in 2 weeks, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central European time, where we will be talking local. So see you in 2 weeks and have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.